Jonah Hawley had lived alone on the High Plain Ranch for so long that silence felt like another fence line around his life. The house was sturdy, but plain, built by his hands after the war ended, and he came west seeking distance rather than dreams. One late afternoon, a dust cloud rose beyond the cottonwoods, and with it came Mara Ellison, riding stiffly, her posture proud despite exhaustion. She said little when she dismounted, only that her wagon had broken and night was coming fast. Jonah nodded and offered shelter without questions. As she followed him inside the barn, the air felt heavy, not with danger, but with something unspoken. Mara noticed everything: the careful order, the worn saddle, the calm way Jonah moved, as if nothing could rush him. When he told her to rest and simply sit where she felt steady, his voice carried quiet authority, not command. She obeyed, surprised by her own trust. Neither understood yet that this small moment would bend both their futures away from loneliness toward something deeper and uncertain. The wind outside whispered of change neither of them could name, yet both felt settling gently into their chests that evening together. Mara slept lightly that night, waking to unfamiliar creaks and the low sound of cattle beyond the walls. At dawn she rose, embarrassed by how safe she felt beneath another person's roof. Jonah was already awake, cooking simple food and treating her presence as ordinary, which eased her nerves more than kindness would have. Over breakfast they spoke in careful pieces about weather horses, broken trails, and work that needed doing. When Jonah mentioned repairing a heavy iron seat used for shoeing horses, Mara offered to help without thinking. Later in the corral she watched him test the solid frame, and he told her calmly that it was strong, too strong for careless use. His words carried no joke, only reassurance. He told her to sit slowly, feel the balance, and trust the wood beneath her. Heat rushed to her face at the misunderstanding that flickered, then faded. What lay beneath was not embarrassment, but a lesson in steadiness. She realized Jonah spoke this way to everything broken or unsure. By midday, laughter replaced tension, and Mara found herself staying not because she had nowhere else, but because she wanted to understand the man who treated strength and gentleness together. Days passed, and the storm that delayed Mara's journey never truly came. Instead, routine settled like dust after rain. Jonah showed her the land boundaries, the spring that never dried, and the grave where his wife rested beneath a single stone. He spoke of loss without drama, and Mara listened without pity. In return, she shared fragments of her past, moving town to town, surviving on work and caution. Each evening ended with shared meals and quiet looks that lingered longer than manners allowed. One afternoon, a neighboring rancher stopped by and eyed Mara with open interest. Jonah remained calm but placed himself slightly between them, a gesture small yet unmistakable. Mara noticed and felt something inside her steady. That night she asked Jonah why he helped so freely. He answered that help given with control was not help at all. Those words settled deep. When she lay awake later, she realized the cloth she once feared losing in life was not fabric but dignity. Jonah had never tried to take it. He only waited for her to choose when to set it aside. This understanding warmed her more than blankets and made the dark feel safe and of promise. Tension returned unexpectedly when trouble followed Mara from town. A man named Silas, who claimed past ownership of her labor, arrived demanding payment. Jonah listened once, then refused without raising his voice. Silas laughed and threatened law and fists. Jonah stepped forward, steady as stone, and told him to leave. The ranch seemed to hold its breath. Silas backed away, sensing limits he could not cross. Afterward, Mara trembled with delayed fear. Jonah did not touch her until she nodded permission. That choice mattered. She told him no one had ever waited before. Jonah answered that waiting was respect, not weakness. That night, rain finally fell soft and steady. They sat close by the fire, listening. When Jonah brushed her hand, she did not pull away. The contact was simple but charged with meaning. It was not hunger but trust. In that quiet moment, Mara understood that intimacy could grow from safety rather than danger. She rested her head on his shoulder and felt the long road behind her finally ease its grip. The future remained uncertain, yet for the first time it felt chosen, not forced. and that truth steadied her breathing and her heart through the quiet night. Morning light revealed changes too small to name, but impossible to ignore. Jonah moved with softer attention, and Mara answered with ease. They worked together repairing fences and mending tack, sharing water and stories. When their hands brushed, neither apologized. The land itself seemed to approve, wind gentle, sky wide. Jonah wondered when his guarded life had opened without warning. Mara wondered when she had stopped planning her escape. Neither spoke these thoughts aloud. Instead, they honored them by staying present. That evening Jonah cooked while Mara set the table, an act that felt symbolic though unspoken. After dinner, Jonah told her she could stay as long as she wished with no debt owed. Mara thanked him, then surprised herself by saying she wanted to stay longer than that. Jonah accepted her words without celebration. That restraint made the choice feel real. As stars emerged, Mara felt something settle, not possession, but belonging freely given. She knew challenges would come, yet she felt ready. The ranch was no longer shelter alone, it was becoming home. For both of them, this beginning carried promise, risk, and a quiet hope strong enough to face whatever trials followed beyond the horizon ahead together. That night's sleep came easily to Mara for the first time in years. Dreams were calm, filled with open fields and steady hands. Jonah lay awake longer, listening to the house breathe around him. He understood now that offering space had invited connection. Control would have driven it away. As moonlight crossed the floor, he felt gratitude and caution balanced together. Tomorrow would bring work choices and consequences. But tonight peace was enough. Outside coyotes called, and the ranch answered with quiet strength. Somewhere between fear and desire, something solid had formed. It was not yet love, but it was close and honest. As the fire cooled, Jonah allowed himself a small smile. Change had arrived not with force, but with patience. And in that patience, both of them had found something worth protecting. The days ahead would test them with doubt, weather, and memory, yet this beginning, rooted in respect, promised growth that neither could have imagined when loneliness ruled their separate lives, and now quietly faded into the past behind them, leaving space for trust, choice, and a shared future shaped by care, patience, and courage, steady as the land itself beneath the wide open sky above all. The next morning arrived with a pale sun and a wind that carried the smell of damp earth across the ranch. Mara woke early and lay still for a moment, listening to the quiet sounds of the house. She realized she felt no urge to flee. That alone felt strange and powerful. When she stepped outside, Jonah was already working near the corral, repairing a loose rail. He greeted her with a nod and a calm good morning, as if her presence had always belonged there. They shared coffee without ceremony and spoke of plans for the day. Jonah mentioned riding to the far ridge to check fencing damaged by winter storms. Mara offered to go with him. He agreed easily without surprise. The ease between them grew not from words, but from shared motion, as they saddled the horses and rode out beneath the widening sky together. The land stretched endlessly, and Mara felt small yet steady riding beside him. As they traveled, Jonah spoke of the ranch history and the hard seasons that had shaped it. Mara listened carefully, feeling the rhythm of his voice match the horse's stride. When they reached the ridge, the wind rose stronger. Jonah dismounted and showed her where posts had loosened. As they worked side by side, their movements synchronized without effort. At one point, Mara slipped on loose stone, and Jonah caught her arm quickly, then released it just as fast. He asked if she was all right and waited for her answer before continuing. That pause meant more than the grip itself. Mara realized how rarely people waited for her response in life. She nodded and thanked him, and they finished the work in silence, filled with mutual respect. When clouds gathered unexpectedly, Jonah suggested sheltering in a small line shack nearby. Inside, they shared water and bread. Conversation turned personal without warning. Mara asked why Jonah never remarried. He answered honestly, saying he had not been ready to risk another loss or another person's freedom. Mara felt the words settle deeply between them. The ride back was slower, thoughtful. Near the creek, they stopped to water the horses. Mara watched Jonah move with quiet care and felt warmth rise unexpectedly. She admitted that she had never stayed anywhere long because staying meant being owned or owed. Jonah looked at her steadily and said staying only meant staying if both people agreed freely, nothing more. That statement shifted something inside her. Later that afternoon, a group of cattle spooked by thunder scattered toward the ravine. Jonah and Mara rode hard together, cutting them off before disaster. Their teamwork was instinctive. When the last animal was secured, they laughed breathless from relief. The shared danger bonded them more tightly than comfort could have. As evening fell, they returned exhausted but satisfied. Jonah cooked while Mara cleaned up. Their closeness felt natural, now unforced and warm. When their hands brushed, neither pulled away. No words were needed. Trouble came again sooner than expected. The same man Silas returned with 2 others, claiming Jonah had no right to harbor Mara. Jonah stood firm, repeating his refusal. Mara stepped forward this time and spoke for herself. She told Silas clearly she was no one's property and owed him nothing. Jonah backed her presence silently, his support unwavering. The men left grudgingly, but warned they would return. Fear trembled through Mara after they were gone. Jonah asked if she wanted to leave for safety. Mara surprised herself by saying no. She wanted to stay and face whatever came with choice, not flight. Jonah respected her decision and promised to prepare. That night they planned together, setting watch schedules and contingencies. Partnership formed not from romance but from shared resolve. Later by the fire, Jonah asked gently if she was afraid. Mara said yes, but not of him. That honesty felt freeing. Jonah told her courage was not the absence of fear, but the refusal to let it decide alone. Days passed under tension but also growing closeness. Neighbors came by offering quiet support. Word traveled quickly in small places. Mara found herself accepted not as rumor, but as person. She helped with chores confidently and spoke openly. Jonah watched her confidence bloom and felt admiration deepen into something warmer. One evening under a sky thick with stars, Mara admitted she had never imagined a future beyond survival. Jonah told her futures could be built slowly, brick by brick. He asked nothing of her but presence. That night she rested her head against him and allowed herself to imagine staying through winter, through years even. When she fell asleep, Jonah stayed awake, guarding both the land and the fragile hope growing between them. He knew threats remained, yet he trusted what they were building. The ranch felt different, alive with shared intention. Whatever came next would test them, but the bond forming now was strong, because it was chosen daily, renewed each morning by respect, trust, and quiet. Affection growing steady as the land beneath their feet, promising endurance, beyond fear, and a path forward. Neither would walk alone anymore. By early summer, the ranch no longer felt like a place Mara Ellison was borrowing time from. It felt earned through work shared and trust built day by day. The mornings were warm now, and the fields glowed with new grass. Mara rose with the sun without dread. She knew where to step and how to move through the house, as if it had learned her shape. Jonah Heil noticed the change quietly. He never commented on how she belonged. He simply treated it as truth. That steadiness gave Mara room to breathe. Each task they completed together carried weight beyond usefulness. Repairing fences, feeding stock, and hauling water were acts of partnership. When disagreements came, they talked them through with patience. Neither raised voices, neither claimed authority. That balance mattered. It turned attraction into something deeper and safer. The land seemed to respond with abundance and calm. The threat of Silas had not vanished, but it had faded into watchfulness rather than fear. Jonah had reinforced boundaries, and neighbors checked in more often. One afternoon, Jonah suggested teaching Mara how to handle the heavy press used to shape leather and iron fittings. He explained its strength and limits carefully. He told her it required patience and balance more than force. Mara listened closely and followed his guidance step by step. When he told her to sit and feel the weight before adjusting pressure, his tone was calm and instructional. She smiled, realizing how far she had come from misunderstanding intention. The tool obeyed steady hands. The lesson was simple but meaningful. Strength could be guided, not feared. Later, Mara laughed at herself and Jonah smiled back, warmth shared without embarrassment. That moment sealed her trust more than any vow could. As weeks passed, they grew comfortable with touch that was gentle and asked permission without words. A hand offered, not taken. A closeness chosen, not assumed. One night after a long day, they sat on the porch listening to insects sing. Jonah spoke of his wife again, not with sadness, but with gratitude. Mara listened and felt no jealousy. She understood that love did not erase what came before. It built upon it. When Jonah finished, he asked if she wanted to share more of her past. Mara hesitated, then spoke of moments she rarely named. She spoke of being told to endure without choice, of being treated like a burden or a prize. Jonah listened without interruption. When she finished, he thanked her for trusting him with those truths. He did not offer solutions or pity. That restraint healed something quiet inside her. Trouble returned suddenly one afternoon when Silas arrived again, this time with papers claiming legal right to Mara's labor. Jonah read them carefully, then calmly pointed out their falsehoods. He told Silas to leave or face law himself. Mara stepped forward and declared she would testify against him if needed. Her voice did not shake. Silas laughed but retreated, seeing resolve matched by community support. After he left, Mara felt release mixed with exhaustion. Jonah held her hand without squeezing, letting her choose closeness. She leaned into him willingly. That night they spoke about the future honestly. Jonah said he would never bind her with debt or claim. Mara said she did not want to leave anymore. Days grew easier after that. Mara began planning improvements for the ranch, suggesting garden storage and shared spaces. Jonah welcomed her ideas. They argued sometimes, but always returned to understanding. Romance deepened not in grand gestures, but in consistency. When Jonah touched her, it was with respect and patience. When Mara reached for him, it was with trust. One evening she admitted she feared happiness might vanish if she named it. Jonah told her happiness did not need naming to exist. It needed tending. That truth eased her. They shared their first kiss under the open sky, simple and unhurried. It carried promise rather than demand. Neither felt the need to rush beyond that moment. The restraint made it meaningful. As summer heat settled, the ranch thrived. Neighbors spoke well of Jonah and Mara together. They were seen as partners equal in decision and effort. Mara realized how far she had traveled, not in miles but in spirit. She no longer measured safety by walls, but by respect. Jonah realized his guarded heart had opened without loss. Instead, it had grown stronger. One evening, Mara found an old cloth she once used as armor against the world. She folded it carefully and set it aside. She no longer needed it. Jonah watched quietly, understanding the symbolism without explanation. That night they lay close, listening to the world beyond the walls. Their bond felt steady, chosen, and real. When autumn hinted on the horizon, Jonah asked Mara if she wished to stay through winter. Mara answered without hesitation that she wished to stay beyond seasons. Jonah smiled softly. He told her choice mattered more than promise. Mara agreed. Together they stood watching the land glow gold. They knew challenges would come, storms, sickness, and doubt. But they also knew they would meet them together. What began with caution had grown into trust. Autumn settled gently over the ranch, and with it came a calm neither Jonah nor Mara had known before. What once felt like shelter had become home, built not on rescue or debt, but on choice, respect, and shared work. Mara moved through the ranch with confidence, her past no longer chasing her footsteps. Jonah watched her with quiet admiration, knowing she stood beside him because she wanted to, not because she had nowhere else to go.